Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Erin. I'm on our marketing team here at ProsperWorks. Today we're going to be running over the magic formula to optimize your demo. So joining me today is our resident in-house expert, Kyle Bastien, on our sales training team. He's been with us for about 6 months, and our sales team has been super lucky to have him. He's really, shaping, forming their demos, and making sure that they are excelling. So in his previous life, he was a sales excellence honoree at Intuit for 3 straight years. He built out the renewal sales team at Demandforce from 2 reps into a machine that was doing 1.3 million in ARR per quarter within 18 months. And he directed global sales at Humanity.com Inc. Prior to joining us here at ProsperWorks, which is a scheduling software. All right, and just a quick agenda for you guys. We're going to be running over the quote-unquote secret formula. There are 3 major pieces to it. Number 1, the mindset. Number 2, the actual demo process and flow. And then 3rd is feedback loop, and Kyle will run through all of those for you. So we're going to run through the presentation first, and then at the end we'll leave a couple minutes for Q&A. So if questions come up while we're presenting, there's a questions panel on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar screen, or if something comes up after the webcast, definitely feel free to email info@prosperworks.com, and we will have a sales rep get back to you. And now I'm going to hand it over to Kyle, and he's going to give you his take on what is ProsperWorks.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. Appreciate the introduction, and thank you guys all for attending today. I've been working in, what I would call like transactional solution sales to kind of the SMB and mid-market space for the bulk of my sales career. So this is something that I feel really passionate about and that I love talking about. So I'm really excited that you guys are all here with me today to go over this stuff. So first, I'm just going to give you 90 seconds on ProsperWorks. ProsperWorks is a CRM that is built to help companies sell more. It was founded by a couple guys who had built and sold a couple companies and realized that the CRMs that they had used were built mostly for managers and not with the end user or the sales rep in mind. We tried to flip that on our head in light of a couple statistics. 1, 47% of CRM implementations fail, and 2, that 20% of sales rep time is typically spent manually entering data into the CRM. So we set out to solve those problems by partnering up with Google. We are the CRM that they recommend for the G Suite, and we're able to automate a lot of the things that sales reps would have to do manually with other solutions so that they spend more time selling and ultimately achieve better sales results. So that's ProsperWorks. Thinking about what we're going to talk about today, as Erin hinted, I think the secret formula, I guess, to improving your sales demo and your sales results is part of 3 things. And the first is the mindset that you have going into your demo and how you kind of cultivate a positive and winning attitude on a day-to-day basis. Second is the actual demo itself, and we're going to spend a lot of time unpacking that. And the last is kind of the best practices for feedback loop on how you can be optimizing your demo and always improving your results. So I'm going to start by talking about the demo mindset. So the first thing I like to think about when I think of what was successful for me and what's one of the common traits that I've seen in the most successful salespeople that I've had the chance to work with in my career is they never waste an at-bat. So the first thing that you need to be thinking about when you go into your demo is just basic preparedness and the expectation that the customer is going to buy. Now, if we've worked in sales long enough, we know this isn't always going to be true. No one I've ever known has had a 100% close rate on demo, but the best sales reps always believe that everybody they talk to is going to buy. And they go into the call prepared for that by having a process, knowing what the close is going to be, doing the research for the call, and then, of course, the basics like showing up on time and being in the proper headspace to perform at a top level. One of the analogies I like to think about here, and my old baseball coach used to say this, was that the difference between the guys that hit 280 and the guys that hit 330 has almost nothing to do with skill. They all can, swing the bat well. They all can, command the strike zone. Skills-wise, there isn't that big of a gap. But the top baseball hitters in the league, they never ever waste an at bat. They literally focus on every single pitch, every single at bat, and that mental discipline is harder than you think to cultivate. But it is a common characteristic between all the great sales reps and something that you need to be very intentional about cultivating within yourself. So how do you do that? I personally, you guys have probably heard it said, it's almost a cliche to say that winning is a habit, but I firmly believe that to be the case, because the truth is in sales, you cannot afford to waste an hour. You definitely can't afford to waste a day. And look, let's be honest, there's going to be days when you wake up and you're not feeling it, or maybe you're dealing with something outside of work that has you distracted, or whatever the case may be. So I found it to be very important to build routines into your day-to-day life that are going to put you in the best position to give 100% every single day. You cannot just leave it up to how you happen to be feeling that morning. So some of the things around that mean like some basic stuff that's gonna sound kind of cheesy to even say, but like, eating a good breakfast on your commute into work, or at home before you go into work, either watching some inspirational material, reading some educational books. Some guys I know play chess on their phones or something, but something to get your brain stimulated and get you ready to go, so that when you sit down and you're ready to start calling on customers, you're kind of like warmed up, neurons are firing, and you're in a position to win. Another thing that I talk about a lot is the power of self-talk. Basically, if you think about what is the talk track in your head going into every day, some people are visualizing success, imagining themselves closing 5 deals that day. But if you've ever had, any kind of rut in sales, and we've all been there, it can be easy to talk yourself into the idea that, man, maybe I can't do it, or maybe there is some factor outside of my control that's keeping me from being successful. You're not getting enough leads. The leads aren't good enough. The product doesn't have this feature, or whatever the case may be. So what you need to do is focus only on the things that you can control, and be very intentional about controlling those things. And that's basically your thoughts and your actions. The best salespeople in the business focus on those things only. And basically, if you are resilient and accountable, then you will be successful over a long enough time frame. So when I say accountability, that's what I'm talking about, is owning your actions and making sure that your actions are putting you in the best position to win. So how do you cultivate that? It's what I call the little brother mindset. And the analogy works like this, like if you have a younger brother or a younger sister, or whatever, or somebody in your family, I'm not saying that you're not aware of, areas of improvement for that person, but to anybody outside the family, you defend them to the death, right? Like, nobody can say anything bad about my little brother or my little sister. I am going to completely sell out, all in, all the time, on defending those folks, advocating for them, and fighting for them. And that's how you need to think about your company, right? When you are in sales, you have to go all in for your company. You have to believe in it. You have to believe in your product, and you have to believe in the people that you work with, and you don't want to let anybody down. So when I'm talking to a customer, I genuinely believe that, if that person is qualified and there's a solution fit there, that I'm letting them down if I do not fight for their business. It's my job as a salesperson to convince them of the benefit, to articulate how our software or our product or our service is going to improve their lives, and I'm going to go all in on that. So, so those 3 things I think are what goes into the demo mindset. Okay, so the next part of this is your process. The process that I'm going to go through here is the one that I've found to be effective through several different products in unrelated industries. And this is just what I've kind of arrived at as kind of the best structure. But the point I want to make first is just the necessity of a structure. I'm always surprised sometimes when I'm listening to calls from even pretty successful reps, how freewheeling some of their sales conversations can be. 91% of top sales performers have a defined sales process. And the idea here is that you don't want to think about or invest too much of your mental bandwidth in what you're going to do. You want to spend your time and mental bandwidth in a demo on connecting with the customer, understanding their pain, and creatively conveying the benefits of your product. So I don't want to be thinking about where am I going to go with this call next. I kind of want to know where these calls go. And I want to put some time in up front in thinking about, what are the logical check boxes that need to be checked off so that at the end of this call, the only rational thing to do next is to purchase or commit to some firm next steps to move forward with us, right? So I'll take you through the process that we use here at ProsperWorks that I've used at other companies. Yours may be different. You may have some things that I don't have here. You may disclude some things. I think the point I want to make is that you should have a codified best way to prosecute a demo. So for us, there's 6 parts to it. There's rapport, agenda, discovery, a brief company story, your actual product show and tell, and then the close. And I'm going to go into more detail now, and we'll unpack each of those things. I'm going to pay particular attention to some of the most important parts of this, which I think are discovery, the product demo, and how to ask for the business. But the demo is an organism, right? Like all these things play together into a great conversation. So we'll unpack each one of them now. Okay, so first part is starting your demo on the right foot, right? We'll talk about rapport, setting an agenda. Rapport is a tough thing to train, right? It's hard to tell somebody how to be, likable and trustworthy on a call. If we're in sales, like we probably have some of those characteristics as it is. But I think it is very, very important to be intentional about humanizing yourself. Rapport to me is not, asking about the weather, where they're at necessarily, but it's more about humanizing yourself, being candid, and building trust. So basically, the discovery, like I'm hinting at, is going to be very important, and we're going to unpack that later. But the rapport part of it is about building that trust or dropping that shield so that people will be honest with you. They're going to be honest with people who they feel comfortable with and who they trust, and you can do that by building some rapport. And so I'll give you a tip on how to do that quickly at the start of the call, even though I will say that it does happen throughout. What I like to do is, every sales call usually starts with like, hey, Aaron, this is Kyle at ProsperWorks. How you doing today? And Aaron says, I'm good, Kyle. How are you? And most people say, I'm good. Let's go ahead and dive back in. So I don't do that. When somebody says, I'm good, how are you doing? Even if it's kind of like a throwaway chit-chatty question, I am going to answer that question as if, they are keenly interested in exactly how I am doing in that moment. And that might mean that, oh man, I'm doing great. It's the last day of the month for us. We got a lot of deals flying through the door. The energy's fantastic, and I get fired up for days like this, or, I've got a 1-year-old who barely slept last night, and I got a brutal night of sleep, so I'm kind of struggling this morning, but, great ones play hurt, right? Usually the more self-deprecating the fact is you reveal about yourself, the better, because it makes people more comfortable, and you're not like, necessarily taking yourself too seriously, even though you're taking this conversation too seriously. That's very disarming. So that's just a little trick. When someone asks you how you are, tell them how you are. Don't throw that question away. And if you want the person to trust you, you can build trust by giving trust, right? So reveal something about yourself that lets the customer get to know you a little bit better, and then they will be more forthright with you for the rest of the demo. All right, so now we get to the agenda. So you spent some time before this thinking about what your best sales process is. Your agenda is where you assume control of the conversation and make sure that that process gets followed, right? This is also great basic meeting hygiene. I don't know if any of you guys have ever gone into a meeting that was called by somebody at your company and they just launched right into talking about stuff with no kind of agenda, no idea what we're doing here or what we're trying to accomplish. Those are usually terrible meetings, and everyone's just like, looking out the window or ready to run for the door as soon as they can. So I want to let everybody know at the beginning of a demo, like, what are we really here to accomplish, and when are we done with it, and how is this going to go best? I will give them the opportunity to add anything to that if they want, but I called this meeting. It's my demo. I'm running this show, so it's my obligation and best practice to set an agenda for how this is going to go. 2 really important things that we personally want to establish in the agenda. One is setting the expectation for the call, and there's 2 expectations. First of all, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about your business, specifically the pain points that brought you to look at our company in the first place. That can be an uncomfortable conversation, and I need to build some value around going through that with me. And specifically in our case, we do it around time saving, and it sounds something like this, like, hey, here's how I found these calls to go best. I'm going to ask you some questions about your business. And the idea is that I need to understand what the pain points are that brought you to ProsperWorks, and I'll tell you whether we can even solve them or not. If I can't solve them, I'm going to tell you in 5 minutes, and this is going to be a quick conversation because I don't want to waste either of each other's time. If I can solve those problems, I'm going to show you with our product exactly how I would go about doing that in your specific case. At the end of the call, if I have checked all of your boxes off, then we can go ahead and get you started right away. Does that sound fair? And so the two things I'm doing is teeing up the discovery and setting the expectation already that if this goes well, and if I've been thorough, that you're ready to go forward with me right away. Those are the two things that I think are most important about the agenda. Okay, so now we're talking about discovery. Discovery is crazy important. This to me is the entire demo. I kid you not, you can win deals on the spot from doing great discovery. And the purpose of this is as follows. The way I like to think about it is starting with a customer's life cycle. So somebody starts a business or becomes employed at a business. As they're working, they uncover problems. They think about where those problems lie and decide that it's not in product or in marketing or in support, but it's actually in sales organization, or in our case, or in whatever department that you sell to in your company. They then diagnose that as being specific to tools and not necessarily leadership or people or anything else. And specifically, the tool is the tool that you provide, right? Then they're receptive to your marketing message and book a demo, or if you have an inbound-based business, they request a free trial or fill out a web form. But the point is, there's a long period of time in some cases and a lot of thought that has gone into solving the problem that you solve prior to them getting on the demo with you. So I think about this as catching yourself up on the conversation that's already taking place in the customer's mind. That is the purpose of discovery. I also think about it this way. People generally do not buy on logic. They buy on emotion and then justify it with logic. I'm sure you guys have heard this expression before. I certainly have found it to be true. If you've been think about the phrase, a gut feeling, right? We make decisions all the time that we can't necessarily explain logically, but just feel a certain way. So that speaks to the emotional nature of decision making. So when I'm doing discovery, I need to know what the pains are that the business is experiencing that make it so important that we solve that problem that ProsperWorks or whatever your product or service is can potentially solve. This is so critical. And then exactly maybe how they feel about it. I wouldn't ask that question, but I'll get in that in a minute. But I need to know what the emotions are that are tied up with solving this problem, because I'm going to speak to that later. I'm going to spend the entire demo talking about how ProsperWorks or how your software or your solution or your service can be applied to the resolution of that pain. So the way we train it here at ProsperWorks is what we call the 5 levels of discovery. There's basically 5 types of information that I think about, and I rank them here in kind of order of how difficult they are to get. The first is business facts, and that's basically what line of work is the customer in, how long have they been around, well, why were they founded, how many employees do they have, what do they do in annual revenue. This is usually stuff that you will have by doing some pre-call research, or if you have an SDR team, they'll have flushed a lot of this out. If you use ProsperWorks, we enrich the leads, so you might have more of this data at your fingertips when you go into your demo, but I'm still going to ask the customer to, well, why don't you start by telling me about your business, right? People love to talk about themselves. It's generally everybody's favorite topic, and it's something that is an easy question to answer. It's open-ended. It's going to get the customer going, and I'm going to be listening to how they talk about their business because that's interesting to me. Next thing I'm going to ask about the process facts, and for whatever process that you solve for within your company, for us it's usually around how they sell. I'm going to ask what the current state is. So how do you sell today, or how do you manage XYZ, whatever it is that you address. The next question is process pain, and it's very important when you ask this question to use the phrase problem or broken, but like we'll phrase it like, what's the problem with that process that has you looking at ProsperWorks, or what's broken with how you're doing it today that makes has you looking for a CRM or whatever it is that you guys do. This is super important because this is what the discovery is all about: problems, pain, and how that person feels about it. So I'm gonna frame the conversation around that. Now, up to this point, you're gonna have pretty easy conversations. Most people will readily talk about their business facts, their process facts, and their process pain. They haven't really revealed anything that makes them vulnerable or is of great importance. It's just kind of good contextual information. The next level is the most important and the hardest to get. That's the business pain and the core pain. And this is where we ask what we call the impact questions, which is, how are those process problems affecting the business today? You know, or you can think about that as like the who cares question. Like, okay, so you have problems with your process. Who cares? How is that negatively impacting the business? And this is gonna be tricky. You know, sometimes they'll lay out like a bevy of process problems, and it will seem extremely obvious what the negative impacts of that, to the business are. You probably have an idea where they're gonna go with this. You have to ask the question anyway. And in those cases, sometimes I'll even preface it with, this might sound like an obvious question, so forgive me for asking, but I never like to assume anything. How is that process wreaking havoc in the business right now? And you need to be creative around this, right? And then lastly is core pain. And core pain is basically the person you're talking to, what is their relationship to the business pain that they were just talking about. Now, I don't think it's necessarily professionally appropriate to say, and how do you feel about that? You know, like you're not their therapist, and that, is going to get some combative or defensive responses. Instead, you need to practice active listening, which is the process of understanding what is being communicated, not just what is being said. So the things you want to listen to are hesitation. You want to listen for defensiveness. You want to listen for changes in tone or pace against their baseline. Some people, myself, as you may have noticed, tend to talk pretty quickly. When someone hits on something that's like personally important to me or that I have emotions tied up in, I might slow my manner of speech, right? Some people talk slowly as a baseline, and then when they talk about something important, they get more animated, maybe louder, maybe softer, maybe talking faster or slower. You need to listen for these things to know when you've hit a hot button, right? And then that is what the core pain is going to be. And sometimes the best way to flush out core pain is to simply ask the person to tell me more when they talk about business pain, right? So that sounds like a big problem, and I'm very interested in that. Can you tell me more about that, right? Or sometimes you can repeat that back to them, like, wow, so you guys missed quota by 20% last quarter, and then stop talking. And people will fill that air by being more revelatory around the nature of that issue. So you don't need to be, too much of a ninja when it comes to, figuring out the right, perfect, incisive question. Sometimes you can just repeat back what the customer said or ask them to tell you more, and oftentimes that they will. Okay. I think that's it for discovery. Let's talk about the transition to talking about value. I'm going to go through this quickly so we can talk more about the product demo. Did spend a lot of time on discovery because I do think it's that important to the conversation. So when it comes to transitioning, the person, if you've done discovery well, has just been somewhat vulnerable with you. They may have revealed things around the business that they're, loath to even talk to their subordinates about, or maybe they haven't talked to anybody about, and you've done a great job. So you now need to receive this information, right? The customer, we need to transition from talking about needs to talking about solutions. And so the best way to tie that all together is to simply repeat back to the customer what you've heard them say in summary format, and then make sure to convey that you're not passing any judgment, but rather that you empathize deeply with what they're going through, right? You need to have kind of geeked out a little bit on this person's business and really go there with them. And now you're going to say, well, wow, listen, thank you for sharing all that with me, right? That honesty is really a gift. And you're going to transition that with, I'm going to play all this back to you just so that, I make sure that I understand you completely. And then you summarize back, in a format of this is the line of work you're in. This is how you sell today. This is the problems of that process. And those problems are causing all this mayhem within the business, specifically A, B, and C. And this is why it's so important to solve for this problem today. Did I get all that right? Is there anything that you would like to add to that, having heard that back? No. And what you guys will hear if you've done this right is like an audible sigh of relief. Like people have been understood around something that was personal or important to them. That is the ultimate trust builder, right? And now they don't need to spend any more time explaining themselves or defending themselves or anything like that. You guys can fully dive into solving for the problem and getting into the solution. Basically, relief will be high and excitement will be at its peak. The prospect they can't wait to see your product at this point, and you have teed up your demo perfectly. You're then going to probably want to go into a brief company story. I did one at the beginning. I try to keep that to less than 90 seconds. Anything over 2 minutes, there's some really great research out there shows that people tune out. If you start talking about, oh, we've been around for this long, we have this many customers, we have raised this much in funding, we've won these awards. I mean, you guys are already bored hearing this, do it in a theoretical position, right? So do not go into what I call like the trophy case company story. All you want to articulate in your company story is why you exist and the sandbox within which you play, okay? That needs to be less than 2 minutes, aim for 90 seconds max. Okay, so now let's talk about the demo. So at ProsperWorks, we don't demo our features, we try not to, we demo our benefits, and that's what I would encourage everybody to do and to understand the difference between what your clicks are or what your product or software attributes are, and focus on what the benefits are that the customer can glean from your features and your functions. Frankly, people care less about the how and more about the what. What is it going to do for me? How they do it can become largely irrelevant if you have done a great discovery process. So I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but it's definitely not the emphasis of your product demo. So, for example, in our business, we have, a CRM might have 200 plus features. I'm not going to talk about 200 features. I'm not going to do the Vince ShamWow human brochure demo. I'm not even going to talk about 10 of my features. I might talk about, a workflow that incorporates 5 or 6 of my features, but all about what the benefit is and how, this is going to remove the business pain or fulfill the need that the person has articulated during discovery. So how do we structure a value demo? I basically, think about my product or our software in terms of modules that deliver specific benefits. And then the way the benefit cell works for us sounds like this. So first of all, if I'm going to show something on a screen share or in person, the first thing I need to orient the customer to is, what the hell am I looking at? So like, what is this? Super brief, just anatomy of what we're looking at, and then why would I go here? So for us, it's like, okay, so I'm showing you what our opportunities tab looks like. You would go here to find your sales deals that are in flight and start working to move them to the next stage or move them towards close, okay? And then you're gonna ask the prospect a question. I'm always loath to see product demos that have, 5, 10, 15 minutes of straight salesperson talk time. That's terrible. You don't want to talk at people. You really want good engagement, even though we've now gone to the part of the demo where you're going to be doing most of the talking. So I make sure to make a point to ask a question to get some engagement before I even go into the product. So these are opportunities. This is what we're looking at, why I'd go here. Tell me a little bit more about how you're managing your sales deals specifically now, right? Or how do you guys do your forecast or your pipeline review with your sales reps? I'm going to ask a specific tactical question that goes deeper than the kind of process stuff that we move through rather quickly at the beginning of the discovery at the front of the call, and get them talking about how they do it now. Okay, so now I'm going to show my product. Okay, so here's what you're going to do, and I'm going to create a use case of like, here's how you use this or what you actually do here, what are the actions that you take, and then I'm going to be very explicit about why this is specifically awesome with ProsperWorks or with your company or your solution. Don't leave it to the customer to connect that dot for them. You need to be mindful of which parts of your product have overlap with competitors or which parts are completely unique to you, and make sure you're highlighting your unique value proposition. So, you know, like a lot of what I showed you is somewhat commonplace in the CRM market, but these three things, which are the most valuable, are completely unique to us, and this is how it's going to change your life. Okay, and then I'm going to make sure that I ask the customer to make sure that I've hit the mark with this. This is super important. We call this a tie back. A lot of people call it a trial close. But at the end of every kind of mini pitch you're going to do throughout your demo, you want to ask them, like, so for example, you talked about at the beginning opportunity management being a problem for you guys. I've just shown you how we're going to manage opportunities within ProsperWorks. So you tell me, is this hitting the mark for you or not? And then people say, yeah, it looks great, or kind of. You know, you want to listen. If you get hesitation, you need to stay on it, right? You can't gloss over that. You can't hope for a positive response. You just want an honest response. And if they're not completely sold yet, if you miss something, you need to stay here until you cleared that up. If they are hard sold and like, yeah, this looks great, then take the extra second to say, great, what do you love about it most? Why do you like it? And people will sell the product back to you. And this does a couple things. One, it cements the neural pathways in their brain that ProsperWorks or your software or solution is awesome by having them say it out loud. And two, it makes sure that you can check that they actually got the key value props you're trying to convey and they're not misunderstanding you at all. So if you think about your, you know, within the demo, this is kind of a mini sales process. I definitely would recommend being very mindful of how you talk about benefits, and do not ShamWow your customers. Okay, and the last thing is closing with a plan. So the most important thing is you need to ask for the business. And the key thing to remember about closing, a lot of people love to talk about closing. You know, we've all seen Glenn Ross and Coffees for Closers and the whole bit, and there's a lot of kind of like cachet built around this. Like you see guys walk around, oh, that guy's a closer, that guy's a closer, or whatever. Closing, I think, if you're intentional about it, is not about arm twisting or high pressure sales. People, I think, hate to be sold, but they love to buy. So the most effective way to close somebody is to present options and give the customer the room to say yes without being pressured into it. So there's two techniques that we use for that. First of all is being very intentional about how you ask for the business and actually knowing where the close takes place. For me, that is in establishing solution fit, not in establishing value. And let me be clear about what I mean by that. After I do a demo and I've tied back each of these processes, at the end I'm going to use what I call the ultimate tie back. And I'm going to say, when I ask for the business, so, you know, we talked about your business problems at the beginning of the call being A, B, and C. I showed you how I would resolve those problems using our software, but you tell me, is this exactly what you were looking for? Use that phrase exactly with intention. You don't want a wishy-washy answer. You don't want to water down that close with like, so could you see this being better than what you're doing today? Everyone will say sure to that. That doesn't mean they're going to buy. If someone says this is the exact solution to the pain that I have, then you've got them. That is the close. You've confirmed solution fit. If you get a hard yes on that, it's done. You need to think about the rest of the sale as merely checking off check boxes to execute the deal. But if you've done good discovery, got business pain, and they have confirmed that you're the perfect fit, then it's over. You have won. All right. And now you might negotiate price in there. You might talk about an implementation schedule and so forth. But I'm listening for a hard yes to that. If I get a hard yes, I go into order taking mode, right? It's like, okay, well then we're getting you into onboarding, or we're going to do the implementation plan. Who you want to work with on that? Okay, cool. And then I'm going to give them an alternative choice close, which sounds like, now, did you want to go annual or month to month? I'd recommend annual, just save 20%, but if you want to go month to month, that's cool too, right? Maybe you guys don't offer different packages, or you do. You say, okay, did you guys want to go with the business plan or the professional plan? Right? Or should we start with a 1-year agreement, or do you guys want to sign up for 3 years? You know, whatever options you have, you basically want to give them 2 choices so they can choose, but either of those choices result in you winning the business. And that's what I mean by an alternative choice close. If you only have one product and one price plan, you can say, okay, are you guys ready to get this started tomorrow, or do you know, we need a couple days to get everything in order? We can take care of the contract right now, though. Right? It's not a big deal. Filling out the contract at that point is like ordering breakfast or asking if they want fries with that. Right? You've already closed them with the solution fit question. Now you need to confidently go through executing the rest of the deal. Now, if you don't get a hard yes, you're going to get a soft yes, or you're going to get an objection or a condition or a stall. Basically, if you get a soft yes, that's the most insidious. You need to flush that out. So is this the perfect solution for you? Yeah. Full stop. Heard a little bit of hesitation there. Are you absolutely sure this is perfect? Yes, this is actually perfect. Okay, cool. Let's get this going, right? Well, it's not perfect. Great. Appreciate you being straight with me. What's not perfect about it? Or where have we missed the mark in the presentation? I feel like I might have, failed to show you something. Can you let me know what that is, right? You need to flush that stuff out. Now, we can do an entire other webinar on objection handling, but that's different from closing, right? Objection handling is about, solving the problems or reducing the barriers that's keeping somebody from getting started. But we have some techniques for that. But the point is, you need to know exactly where you stand and have a plan. I can tease it by saying that in almost all businesses I've worked at, there's usually 3 to 4 main reasons people don't buy right away. And there's no excuse for not having a stone cold handle for each of those objections, since you're going to be hearing the same ones over and over again. So that's it in the demo, guys. The last thing I'm going to talk about is how to create that feedback loop. Now, the most important thing I think around improving your sales game is you have to listen to your calls. I can't tell you how many times it's like we have like a sales dysmorphia, right? I think every salesperson thinks they sound a lot better when they're talking than they do when they listen to the tape. And when you do listen to tape, like, wow, I really, I thought I was nailing that section, but I totally missed the customer giving me some hesitation there, or that person was bought in. I got a hard yes on something and I just glanced right over it. It's very antiseptic, right, to listen to your calls and kind of like clean up what you do and always be on point with it. So when you're doing I highly recommend you record all your calls. There's some great softwares out there these days to do that. We personally use chorus.ai. It works great for us. We track the most important moments of the call, like discovery and product and closing, and we go back and listen to those and have a regular rhythm as a group for reviewing those calls. So for the sales managers out there, we do a training about once every 3 weeks. We call film review, where we kind of take either discovery or closing, and we'll pull out some of the best examples of people doing it and some examples that are kind of like common mistakes or very illustrative of an opportunity for the whole team to improve. Play that to a group so everyone can kind of hear the difference on the call. And it basically settles all arguments, right? Like you might find yourself having debates around like what's the best way to do something. We don't even need to have an opinion on that. We can just listen to the calls and see how the customers respond, because they're the ones that will decide whether your demo is good or not. So I highly recommend that. And then secondly is role playing. When I was learning discovery early in my sales career, I partnered up with another guy who was kind of keen to get better as well. We committed to getting into the office at 7:30 every day, and we'd call each other. We had a standing meeting every morning at 7:30. I'd call his desk or he'd call mine, and we'd each role play discovery 1 or 2 times before we started making our first calls at 8. So create a process, create a habit for doing your role playing. Find an accountability partner within your company that is looking to be as successful as you are, and work together to lift up your game. But the point is, guys, like, if you're not listening to your calls, you don't really know how it's being responded. One hint I'll give around this before I let you guys go is that a lot of times when a sale doesn't materialize, I'll hear a sales manager go to the rep and say, so what happened? Why didn't they buy? And I think that's 100% the wrong question to ask. I think what you want to ask is, what happened? Why would they have bought? And if the rep can't answer that, that's why they didn't buy. Right? I try to go upstream and figure out, like, where did we lose this deal? And in 90% of cases, it's because we didn't do thorough discovery. Right? If you cannot articulate the compelling reason that a customer would have bought your software, you don't need to go look any further. That's the reason they didn't buy it. Everything else after that is immaterial. So that's what you want to be listening for during your call review. Okay, so last slide here, guys, before we turn it over for some questions. The formula recap, I think, is 1, cultivating a winning attitude through habit and keeping that positive mindset. Two, have a plan, establish a demo flow, know exactly where you're going with the call and structure it in a way that the only natural conclusion at the end is to purchase. And then three, never stop learning, right? Always be evaluating yourself with intellectual honesty, with true curiosity around like, man, I just blew that call. I'm going to listen and figure out why, because this is fascinating. I thought I had them, right? Like go into that with that level of interest and treat this, you're in sales or you sell for a living, this is your craft. Take it seriously, unpack it all, and just pay attention. Be engaged to what you're doing and what you're saying, and more importantly, how people are responding to you. And if you focus on that, then you're going to be successful. So that's what I had prepared to talk with you guys. We can open it up for any questions that you might have. I'm happy to answer them for you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Kyle. I'm feeling almost ready to join the sales team after that.
I'll take it. We're hiring.
Great. So we're going to open it up for, like Kyle said, for a couple questions now. If you didn't get a chance to submit a question during the webinar, there is a questions panel on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar screen, and I saw a couple come in. And if there's anything that we don't get to, or if you think of something 10 minutes after we finish this, definitely feel free to email info@ProsperWorks.com.
Yes, Aaron, I got a great question here from Matt. How do you modify your close questions when you have multiple decision makers over multiple demos? Great question. It really is case by case, but I basically try to decide if I'm going to do a demo, it's because there's somebody on that demonstration that needs to be convinced of solution. And maybe it's the first line manager who needs to be bought in before they take it to the VP, who needs to be bought in before they get the CFO to approve the purchase, who needs to be bought in as well. So I need to understand going into the demo, what my objective is, and this is going to be part of my agenda. Who needs to be sold in this call, who needs to be convinced, right? And then I'm going to speak to that person's specific pain points and get them on board. And then my close question might be, if I know I'm not talking to the decision maker at the beginning, I'm still going to confirm solution fit. So was this exactly what you guys were looking for when you got on the call? And they're going to say yes. And then I'll say, okay, cool. So if they're not the decision maker, then you're in a situation where you're faced with what I call conditions. It's not an objection, it's not a no, it's just there's more work to do before we're going to be able to go forward with this purchase. I'm going to confirm that, so the one question I like to ask is, so I understand that this isn't your decision to make a loan, and that we still have a bit of a process to navigate within your organization, but if this was your decision, would you be moving forward with me or not, point blank? And if they say yes, then I'm going to partner with them. Like, okay, great. Well, I obviously want to win your business. You want this to be the solution. So help me help you, and let's talk about exactly what needs to happen in order to get this deal done. And so you've built your first, what I call internal champion. They will help you navigate the rest of the company, what other decision makers are. So then it's understanding, okay, what exactly is the process? Who else needs to be bought in? Okay, what do you anticipate to be their concerns with this software? Or you can ask, look, if that person doesn't know, think about, okay, think about an analogous software or solution what you sell. And be like, have you guys ever bought any software like this, and that? Okay, cool. How did that process go, right? And then you can model a previous purchase process for an analogous software to how the rest of your deal cycle is going to go. So it's going to be case by case, but I think the close is the same. It's basically what solution fit is for that person. And then discovery is going to be different depending on the role of the person that you're talking to, but you do want to confirm that you have solved whatever their individual pain points are. And then if you have that, they'll kind of readily help you navigate the rest of the company. So I hope that helps.
And just really quick before we jump to the next question, I've seen a handful of people write in asking if we will have a recording after this. The answer is yes, absolutely. We've been recording the webinar. I will be sharing it to our blog, which is ProsperWorks.com/blog, and it should also be emailed out to all of you guys tomorrow. And then the next question that I am seeing come in, what is one tip for how best to follow up on a prospect that was ready to sign up or purchase, but then goes radio silent after receiving the quote proposal or any materials you sent over?
Yeah, so great question, guys. This happens all the time. For me, it's like I think when I talked about discovery at the beginning, and the importance of having emotion tied to it. If people go radio silent on you, like I try to do like a pattern interrupt. Like a lot of people will follow up with like, hey, just wanted to make sure you got the proposal. Please let me know if you have any questions. And they don't hear anything. Okay, so since you guys proposed last week, hadn't heard back, can we jump on a call tomorrow to discuss? And they're still getting radio silent, right? That's what most salespeople do. They just kind of follow up with like, dude, are you ready to sign the deal yet or what? And obviously they haven't. If they were, they would have done it. So I try to use a pattern interrupt by saying something kind of bold. Just be like, so I'll try to just like get their attention. It's like, hey, you know what, prospect? Sent you the proposal 2 days ago. In my experience, when we have a verbal yes, and then it takes this long to navigate the contract, especially when you told me that it was going to happen pretty quickly, that the deal's going sideways, and the prospect's afraid to tell me about it. So please let me know if that's the case. If it is, not a problem. If you're having issues internally, I can help you solve that. But one way or another, I'd like to push us towards a decision here. So I think at this point you have nothing to lose. You might as well be candid. Another thing you can say is like, hey prospect, I'm completely confused at this point. We talked about you having this acute pain within your business, and that if it doesn't get solved, that you're going to face these consequences. I can't imagine that you're preparing to face those consequences. So at this point, either there's some sort of hang up that that we need to know about, or this deal is going sideways and I'm in the dark. Please don't make me be that salesperson that follows up with you 5 more times and it gets annoying. I don't want to be that guy. You don't want me to be that guy. Just level with me what's going on. So call yourself out and we're like, in this situation, sometimes, I'm going to make 3 more calls and it's not going to go anywhere, and I'm going to bug you, and I'm not going to do that. So just let me know where we stand. Whatever it is fine, but I just need to know what your decision are. Because a lot of times you want to be driving towards decision, not necessarily towards close. And if you do that, you'll get the closes. So I hope that helps. Okay, he's got another one. So how does having discovery and demo done by different people at different times? Obviously discovery first. Okay, great, John. So you're talking about, I think, a situation where you have kind of an SDR team and an AE team, and where do you draw the line between qualification and discovery and demo? For us, first of all, you're absolutely right. Discovery needs to be done first. The demo without discovery is just a waste of everybody's time. So definitely do the discovery first. I know in our organization, we have the SDRs, do more so qualification than discovery, although they do ask 1 or 2 discovery questions like, look, I'm going to tee this up for the account exec, just so that person's prepared. Can you just maybe cut to the chase and give me the one most compelling reason that you might purchase a CRM right now, right? I also, like, as an AE, and some organizations, especially in the mid-market and enterprise space, are going to have their SDRs be a little bit more sophisticated and do kind of like a deeper discovery process. I think the thing you don't want to do as an account executive is get on the phone and say, hey, so I was just going over the notes from your conversation with our SDR, and so I've kind of got caught up to speed with what's been going on. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the demo, right? You don't know that those notes are perfect. You don't know that there's other things the customer's thought about between the time the demo is set and now the time the demo is taking place. So I would always, in the spirit of wanting to help the customer, do some discovery myself. And it's not just that like I want to understand the customer's situation. If I have SDRs that are doing deep discovery, I'm going to have that. But I'm not going to have the benefit if I rely on somebody else who did discovery to hear how the customers talk about it. I'm not going to get those changes in tone and inflection that are going to really reveal emotion behind the problems that are being discussed. So I might just skip right to the pain. It's like, hey, so when I'm talking to the SDR, they said that the #1 business pain you guys are facing is this. Can you unpack that a little bit for me and tell me specifically how that's going right now? So I might cut to that, or just recap at least, like, so I understand you guys are in this line of work, and your process runs like this, and the problems with the process are that. The thing I'm most interested in is what the problems those process breakdowns are having on the business. The SDR hinted that it might be this. Can you please tell me more about that and make sure that I haven't got anything wrong in what we talked about this far? So I'm always gonna at least recap it, but definitely unpack at a deeper level what the business pain and core pain is, because I need to hear them say it. I need to hear how they talk about it to understand it. Okay.
All right. So question from Tim. So he asks, what happens if you have a Debbie Downer who is trying to tank your demo on purpose due to bias you might not know about?
Ooh, I love Debbie Downer. Debbie, I will kill Debbie Downer with kindness. So no, so Debbie, this happens. The worst is when it happens in late stage deals. If you guys have noticed, I'm not a big proponent of like, tricks or kind of flanking these problems. Like a lot of times I like to address these things kind of head on, right? And you can kind of know, like basically if somebody has bias, then you can first tackle their issues with logic. And then if that doesn't work in the face of like an overwhelmingly and logically superior argument, then it has to do with bias. And so if they're late, then maybe you'll go back to your champion and be honest, like, look, I got to just say in my experience, when someone comes in late stage and based on the problems they were solving, I think we have a solution for that, but what was able to gain buy-in. I don't know what's going on, but in my experience, sometimes people have some bias going into this, and I wonder if that's the situation now. Or with Debbie, it's like maybe you can do you got to figure out kind of like what the nature of that bias is, I guess. And a lot of times, if it's the decision maker, then it's going to be tough. You know what I mean? Like you have to kind of address that head on. If the person who is taking the deal is not the decision maker, then you might be all right just putting your best case out there and relying on the fact that her bias has kind of been laid bare in front of the real decision maker.
Awesome. All right. So next one is coming from Jeff. He says, our company is a data company. Getting to a yes requires evaluation of our data. How would you incorporate this into getting that yes?
Yeah, great question. So it's not unlike our business. We have I think that's kind of akin to any business that has a free trial, which is very common in the software space, especially on inbound. I work in companies that have 30-day free trials. At ProsperWorks, we have 14. And I've actually been on the buying end of data companies where you want to kind of see a data file to check validity and things like this. So I think that's pretty common. I think for your business and for any business that has some sort of trial or prove it component, the most important thing is one, still do what we do. Do the discovery, talk about the benefits of what your software is or what your data is in this case. And then if you're prepared to send over a sample file or to show the accuracy or validity of your data, the most important thing is putting clear check boxes against that data. So like even if you're willing to do this for everybody, you might want to make it seem like some people like, look, we don't go around giving out free data to everybody. One, I need to know that this is a qualified opportunity, which means that what exactly are you looking to see in the data that's going to move you from a maybe to a yes or a probably to a yes? How are you going to evaluate it? By the way, I have some ideas on what you should be looking for, and then over what time frame are we going to make a decision? So I want to know exactly what boxes I need to check. Like, well, we need to know that these, are going to check out, that we're going to scrub the data against another database or something and figure out whether it's accurate. It depends on what the case is. But I'm going to clearly define the evaluation process for the trial or for the sample and time box it. So again, you want to kind of control that process, and you want to set expectations over what they're going to see. Like in our business, for example, it's a 14-day trial, so it's more to give them a taste of usability. We're not reasonably going to expect anybody to upload all their data and run full deal cycles within 14 days. So, we want to be clear about like what are we assessing for, and how are we going to assess for that? And like I said, putting some strict parameters, due dates, and time boxing on it.
Awesome. So we have a question from Matt. It's how do you manage pain discovery in a call with multiple roles that are unrelated to each other, in business operations?
Yeah, that's tricky, right? That's I think one of the hardest things when you're on a demo and there's 5 people on the other end of the phone or in the meeting, and they all come from different departments and have different pain points. So you might not be able to prosecute kind of like the full demo. Like you're basically going to want to kind of truncate the top part as best you can. So guys, going in, I've done a little bit of research, and usually if you have a meeting with 5 decision makers or 5 people involved in the process, that's, in my experience, usually the second meeting. So somebody on their side had to put that meeting together. So I would try to get as much information up front from that person as to like, okay, so who's like, if I have, like, I've had situations where, an internal champion will finally get me in the room with all the decision makers. I'm going to do what we call the call before the call, and I'm going to ask him, like, okay, so who's going to be in here? What are their roles? What are their titles? How long they've been with the organization? What do you expect to be their challenges, their pain points, or concerns going in? See if you can get that pre-call research, right? If you can't get that pre-call research, you're going to want to do as much of it as you can of your own. But I would definitely suggest directing specific questions to specific people in the room. So what I'll do sometimes on my notepad is like literally draw out like a fake table. And I'll place the voices in chairs around that table with like a little sketch with pen and paper, and then I'll just think about, if I'm over the phone. In person it's easier, but I'll still kind of do the same thing, but I'll think about who's asking the question, what their role is, and ask them contextual impact questions, like 1 each, and then summarize it for everyone. So what you don't want to do is just like kind of posit questions, especially the impact and pain questions, just to the room in general. I would just make sure that every question you ask, you direct at a certain individual, and make sure that question is appropriate to their level, title, and role.
Awesome. All right, so we are coming up to the top of the hour, so this question is going to be our last one. But it is from Kim Lesh, and he's wondering, asking people questions, dominating the conversation, it's kind of a balancing act between actually getting feedback from people. So how do you go about receiving feedback from them in a subtle way and not overloading them with questions in your conversation?
Okay. Yeah, so I think, you don't want to dance around it too much, right? I think being direct is the most important thing. If we say go around getting feedback, I think you're meaning like how do you get good information from them without loading them with too much questions. So I think the key to this is, like, when you're doing discovery, to keep it focused just on business pain, right? Now, if I ask somebody, like, for example, in our business, like, okay, guys, so how do you sell today? They're going to say, well, we get leads from the website, and we have SDRs call them, and then they set demos for the AEs, who then close the business. There's like, I'm going to get 20 questions I'd want to follow up on around that business process, because I'm a sales guy. I geek out on this stuff. Like, okay, well, how many SDR? What's your SDR to AE ratio? How fast do they jump on their leads? What tool stack are you using to support your sales? Like, I can go so deep on what the process is, but I'm not going to do that in discovery, because you're right, people will get question fatigue during the discovery process. So I want to get to business pain and core pain as quickly as possible, because once I have that and I've played it back to the person and shown that I've received it, I've built trust and credibility that are going to let me ask more questions later. So then when I talked about doing your benefit demo, if I'm going to show into a specific section that speaks to process more tactically, then I'll say, okay, guys, so at the beginning of the call, you talked about your sales process going like this. I actually had a few follow-up questions I didn't ask then. I'd like to unpack a little bit around that now, and do like mini discovery at the beginning of each benefit section. So that's how I do it. You don't have to ask every question you want to ask at the beginning of the call. Focus your questions at the beginning to business pain, and then you can ask more follow-up questions around process pain throughout the demo once you've built more equity with the customer.
Awesome. All right, Kyle. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight and wisdom with us.